Hello, welcome to another episode of my live sketching. This time we are doing a request from a recent subscriber who has asked me to draw Katherine Pierce from the Vampire Diaries. Now, I've not seen this show. It is quite popular, I gather. And so I do hope I've chosen a nice image for you. It sort of jumped out at me when I was looking through, so I thought I'd do this one. So like all my sketches, it all starts out with getting the outline right, you know, and being as precise as I can with the key elements of the face. So the two eyes, the nose, and the mouth. We don't have any ears in the picture here, which is good. So I'm trying to be as accurate as I can with the facial features here, remembering that the guidelines that I'm drawing are on the inside of the shape, and that's because I don't get the final sort of size of the shape wrong when I go in and start doing all the shading. So remembering that every single line guideline that I'm drawing is representing pretty much the inside. If it's not the inside of the shape, it's the center of the shape. And I hope that makes sense. If you've got, you know, say like a circle, I'm drawing a guideline around the outer edge of the circle, or I'm drawing it along the inner edge of the circle. And then when I say center, it's sort of around the sort of the edge of the actual shape. I do hope that makes sense. It will make sense if you're a graphics designer or a printer or even an artist. So yeah, just carrying on here, just being as delicate as I can, getting the proportions right. With the rest of the face, you don't really have to, you know, get it 100% spot on. You just got to make sure that the key facial features are bang on. Oh, and also, the, you know, the shape of the face itself. See right here at the top, I don't have much of a guideline, so I'm sort of guesstimating a little bit there. Again, the same with her side of the eyes there, coming down to the cheekbone. Just making sure that I'm getting it right. I think this shape was kind of in the center. The guideline was kind of in the center of the shape. But I think most of the time when it comes to edges which involve a dark shape beyond it, I can sort of, you know, be a bit brazen. Because I don't, you know, I know that the other side of that is going to be quite dark. And with, you know, with sketching in general, you know, with doing artwork, it requires a heck of a lot of patience and a lot of time. One of the tips that I can give you is that don't think about how long it's going to take you, because you will most likely just get put off. Just dive in. Just don't even think about it. Just dive in. And as you can see, we're only about 4 minutes in, and I've got most of the key guides done. So from this point, I can be fairly loose. I do have to be kind of accurate to a degree, but as long as I'm getting basic area. So also what I'm doing here is I'm outlining certain key areas of the picture. So before I even start sketching, I study the picture and I look at the shapes that are involved, and I know I'm kind of sort of not really psyching myself up, but I'm just sort of soaking in each sort of big basic element. So with this particular image, obviously you've got the face. In this case we've got the hat above her that's sitting on her head. We've got the huge mass of brunette hair, curly hair, and we've got the lace dress that she's wearing. From this particular angle, it's the upper shoulder and arm of the left side. So looking at that, I then sort of go a little bit deeper, another level in, and you can see right now with the hair, I'm literally just stenciling it. I'm getting a general sort of idea as I'm sketching it of where all the hair strands are going, the big clumps. And when I actually get to that point, I'll be filling in all those details based on the reference. I'm not going to sort of go into too much detail with this hair here. You can if you like, but I tend not to, because I like to sort of freeform the hair. It's my favourite part of doing the sketch, of doing any sketch, is doing the hair. But because this is sort of fairly distinctive, I am making sure I'm getting this one right. The hair that's on, so that doesn't bother me, because I like to sort of freeform with hair. I like to, kind of make things up. And for me, there's always been something about hair. I've always loved different kinds of, hairstyles. There's certain kinds of hairstyles that I don't think is right for certain people. Obviously, they can, have their hair how they like, but this particular kind of hair, I adore. It's not so easy to sketch, but again, it's just one of those things you just have to persevere with. So I'm just debating here whether I want to do that sort of the bottom edge of the hair thing there, or whether I just want to sort of fade it off. Whilst I'm deciding that, I'm just going to fill the other bits in that I need. Again, as I said, you don't have to be accurate here, as long as you know roughly the shape of the outline of the clothing. You're okay. And I should just mention also that what I'm doing there with the extra piece of paper on top, it helps so much to avoid the actual paper that you're sketching on getting sort of soggy, if you like, because that will result in paper rippling. You don't want that. It does help with sort of smudging as well. But, ultimately, if you rest your hand on something or a piece of paper on a part of a sketch for too long, it's going to kind of dampen out some of the depth that you've added in. So do bear that in mind. You have to be quite brief. So having a good area, a good flat surface to work on is always a good idea. As clinical as an environment as you can, I always like a clinical environment when I'm sketching. I can't stand a dusty room when I'm sketching. I hate my paper getting all dirty and greasy or whatever, does my head in. So I try to avoid it. So this is the final bit here. I can't see very well at the top there. I'm just sort of doing a little guesstimate. And just making sure I get the hairline guided out here. Again, just being really fairly rough. There's a bit of the ear showing through there, so I've kind of sort of guided that in so I don't mess up the distance from the ear to the eye. And that's kind of mostly it, I think. Just deciding on whether I want to be doing some of this bottom edge stuff. I'm gonna guide it in, just in case I do decide to do it. But usually, what ends up happening is I just kind of, I fade things off towards the edge. With my previous sketch, Alcina Dimitrescu, I kind of mostly went to the edge. There we are, you see, so we've got the outline version right here. Not bad, huh? And that took about 10 minutes. Get my lighting right now. Now that I don't have the backlighting of my light pad. So usually I just jump right in and start defining the eyes. Sometimes I like changing it up and going straight into doing the basic shading. So this time I am going to start doing basic shading. Now with basic shading, be gentle. Hold your pencil like I'm holding it right now, sort of to the side. And remember that you have to do everything in sort of rhythmic movements. Be light, be gentle. And if your shading movements isn't sort of consistent, you're going to get this kind of ununiformed sort of shading patch. As you can see right here, I'm being quite sort of rough here. I normally am quite careful and a lot more sort of slow, I think is probably the right choice of word there. But here I'm just I'm just sort of, I'm being a bit sort of brazen here and relying on my skills, on my eye skills, and this is something I wanted to bring up as well. You want to, the trick really is memorizing shapes. You're memorizing shapes and you're memorizing patches, you're memorizing the shade, the depth, and you want to get it right, and you want to get it right as accurately as you can. Now, I've done this a million times, so I'm used to getting things right on a specific level because I know what I'm looking for. So all of the shading that you're seeing there looks a bit rough, but you'll see in a moment when I go to sort of blend it, it'll start to take shape. Now this is kind of the stage where you can easily kind of get it wrong and you want to just sort of start again and you're annoyed about it and you get put off and you give up. Just keep going, mate. It's it may not turn out right for you first time, but just keep going. So I'm noticing that my camera arm isn't quite so secure. it likes to wobble a little bit, so I do apologise if that's annoying you. I will try and work out another way of getting a more stable shot. It's not so bad right now, actually. So here I am, just using my fingertip, just rubbing along the areas that I want the mid shades to be at, and this is what I'm defining first. This is what I always define first, is the mid shades. I always go in at a middle level, and when I'm happy, I'll start going darker and darker, getting the roundness, the corners, getting all that sense of depth. So just running across the whole face there, rubbing the right areas, the right amount of pressure in the right areas, and all the time you're sort of just, you're glancing back at the original sketch. You're just concerned about getting the basic depth right. So here I am. I just decided to kind of jump in with the definition of the eyes. So remembering that the guidelines that we drew, they were based on being inside of the shape. That gives us a chance to correct any mistakes by a matter of millimeters, admittedly, but it can mean the difference between getting a sketch that looks perfectly accurate and not, basically. A lot of the time people make the mistake of thinking that the shape of the eye isn't right. And you may be thinking that right now. But this is something that I have experience with, because I don't sometimes you have to ignore your gut feelings because you'll look at what you've done and you'll look back at the original and you'll think, fuck, the shape isn't right. But it is. Well, it should be. But what you haven't done is consider the shading or certain kind of depth, shadowing. So it can look quite deceptive. So do be aware of that. Don't necessarily believe in your instincts here. It's always best, if you're unsure, to just go away for a bit, get busy with something else, and then come back, look at it with a fresh pair of eyes, because you will most likely see the problem, if there is one. I'm fairly happy with the basic shape of her right eye, so I'm going to go in on her left. You know what I mean? I never can sort of explain that well. It's her right eye that I'm working on, our left. From our point of view, you get my point. Eyes are quite often not symmetrical. In fact, a lot of the time they're not. And from a quick glance, you'll think that they are most of the time, but they're not. There's subtle sort of imperfections, and if you study the picture and you know what you're looking for, you can pretty much spot those straight away and make sure you include them in the sketch. In this case, we can see that her left eye is slightly narrower than her right eye, but only ever so slightly. Okay, now just going for the lower eyelashes there. No, she has quite prominent eyelashes, lower eyelashes, and so I'm happy about that, because usually, half of the time at least, a subject's lower eyelashes are quite faint, or they're not, not so defined. But she has mascara on, so I'm happy about that, because it brings out the eyes in the sketch quite a lot more. And sometimes, if there isn't any sort of definition there in another subject's portrait, I might add it in, just because it adds more sort of definition. Not too much, of course, because you don't want to go overboard. And trust me, you can go overboard. So now the next step is going in and doing the basic shading for the eyes. This is where it all starts coming to life. When you do the pupils, you must consider how you're going to be representing her pupils. A lot of sketching involves sort of interpretation, if you like. In this case, I'm making her eyes pure black, and they will be pure black. There's not going to be any kind of detail within the iris itself. And you can see on her right eye there's some reflection going on. I won't be putting that in because she's a vampire. I assume she's a vampire. There's no sort of life in her eyes, so I think symbolically that works. But I'm going to make sure I get everything else pretty much spot on. So yeah, working on defining that left eye. This bit really is just about defining the area around the eyes. Sometimes I'll sort of, I'll go out a bit more, but then I'll come back in and just make sure I've got those darker areas mapped out. The better your shading, the better the smudging will be. The more inconsistent your shading, the more difficult your smudging technique is going to be. It all depends on what you're going for, really. If you're going for, like me, kind of like realism, a sort of hazy realism is what I like to call it, then making sure that you have the basics of the shading of the face nailed in, so that when you're ready, you can go in and start adding in some of that finer detail. Trust in your ability. Don't get disheartened. Just keep going. Just keep going. Trust yourself. And see, within a few strokes, it's all starting to take a bit more shape. And it's so therapeutic too. It's so peaceful to do. So just going round the nose, just making sure that I've got all the basic sort of dark areas in. Not so happy about the underside of that eye there. So, as I said, I won't always be doing live commentary. Well, it's post-filming commentary, so I'm not actually talking whilst I'm sketching here. I'm watching a playback and dubbing it over. Alright, so now it's the right eye. So we're nearly half an hour in, and we've done actually quite a heck of a lot. I would consider that this is heading to the breaking of the back of the face, is what I like to call it. So it's I would consider now that the face is half done, and by the end of this video, most of the face will be done. Now, I think this is pretty much the first time you're seeing me start from scratch, I think. Oh no, maybe there's a couple of others, yeah. I think I had the Lassie one. Oh no, yeah, of course, and the Wonder Woman one. I do like to try and capture the entire process. Sometimes it's not always possible. That's just life, I'm afraid. But I do what I can. And I also, you know, I want to kind of share the love, as it were. So the person who subscribed and asked for this will be getting this for free once it's done. So defining the eyebrows now. Thankfully, they're rather simple. Need to come a bit more further out with that. Eyebrows are a funny thing, you know. You can mess them up so easily, but if you know what you're doing, because really what it is I sketch out a shape, regardless of whether it's all in pieces or what have you. I always just draw the basic shape, and then I sort of rub things out and I add things in and all that kind of thing until it's pretty much accurate. No eyebrows are uniform. There's always going to be some heavier areas, there's going to be some lighter areas, so you want to make sure you capture all of that as well. Oops. Right, so just getting that shade to the side of her eye there better. I want to just kind of get the shading of her face done. So I'm going to just sort of crack on with getting all the basic bits in. I see sketching as a lot like sculpture. The image is already there in the paper. You're just sort of carving it out. You know, you're just revealing it by scraping away at the layers of the paper. And it's almost as if it's coming into focus, you know, like a camera. Setting the exposure and just taking your time to get that good shot. And the key thing is just don't be afraid, man. Just dive in. If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. You try again tomorrow or give it another go straight away. And trust yourself. Because the guidelines that you drew, no matter if you do kind of, if you blur over them a lot, it's still, you know, it will still be there. It might end up becoming a little fainter, but you can still make it out. So don't worry about going over, because that's what rubbers are for. See, I'm looking back at this right now and I'm thinking, oh God, what is this? This is mess. Am I going to be able to do this? You start doubting yourself. But it's just an illusion. You just trust it. Trust what you're doing and just keep going. And I promise you, by the time this video is through, you'll end up thinking, I see his point. I'm not trying to big myself up or anything. I'm just trying to prove a point to you that if you persist and if you know what you're doing, you will be absolutely fine. You just take things slowly as well. So, in terms of commentary, I'm gonna leave it here. I'll throw in some music for the rest of the video. There's about another half hour to go. If you are serious about sketching, please watch to the end. Even if you're not serious, just you might be if you keep watching. I will return in the part 2, where I'll be talking about the hair and how I like getting the hair done and going forward from there. So until the next episode, enjoy the rest of the video and enjoy the music too.